Hi, my name's Dr. Adam Booth and welcome to another lockdown edition of Quantum Source. Now today you join me at the pub, and I've actually been making quite a lot of trips to the pub during the lockdown. Not for a quick pint as you might imagine, but because the pub has a bottle bank, and so I've been being a good citizen and bringing all my plethora of empty bottles to the bottle bank and maybe making more trips here than I might ordinarily like to admit. So today we're talking recycling, and I think we're pretty good at recycling glass, we're pretty good at recycling metal, cardboard, things like that, but maybe we still have a little bit of a problem with plastic. And so today's speaker is Professor Thomas Maschmeyer from the University of Sydney in Australia, and Thomas is an expert on plastic recycling, and so we're going to be getting the lowdown from him on the latest technologies that deal with plastic recycling. The recommended source, well, you could pick any one of these recommended sources if you really want to, but given today's Australian connection, last night I was drinking a nice Australian red. Do the right thing with that. And yeah, so grab yourself something nice and we'll give Thomas a call. Cheers. And good morning, Thomas, or actually I should probably say good evening.
Good evening and good morning to you.
And how are you doing?
Oh, very well, very well. Yes, looking forward to this chat on Quantum Source.
Excellent. Thanks very much for contributing. Before we get into that chat, first of all, can you tell me whether your recommended source comes in a glass bottle or a plastic bottle?
I think I might have to say it comes in a glass bottle.
Okay, right. So what have you got there?
I've got a special water of life, aquavit, and it's from Norway called Linje, which means line, and they have it in old sherry flask casks, which are on a boat, and the boat has to cross the equator. Once and then back again, and that gives enough agitation for some of the sherry goodness from the cask to go back into the aquavit, and it's very, very good.
Okay, right. Thanks for the recommendation. I guess that actually kind of parallels your own journey across the equator from, initially from Germany, then moving to Sydney.
That's right, yes. So initially Germany, then Sydney, falling the love of my life. We are still married, so all went out well.
Very nice.
Well, and then back to Europe, to London, to Cambridge, to Delft, and then the kids started to support the Dutch football teams, and that was not acceptable for Germans, so we had to go back on a neutral territory back to Australia.
Very nice. And so that's all the while you've been working in the field of chemistry, and you've eventually started working on methods for processing plastics, right?
Yes, right. Yeah. So we developed a new process called catalytic hydrothermal reactor technology, and that is able to take all sorts of waste organics and make them into valuable products.
Okay, excellent. Could we get some more information on that then, if I get you to share your screen?
Sure. So I will try and share my screen. Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to give this presentation. And it's about the circular economy and converting waste to a resource. And we are very pleased to have an Australian solution being implemented globally. And in fact, its first implementation is in Wilton in the UK, up north.
Okay.
So that might be of interest. So before one talks about all these things, I just want to highlight, I won't go through it in detail, but there are lots of people involved, lots of fantastic young people, very very encouraging for an old person like myself, looking after them, very inspiring, and so lots of support in terms of commercial sponsoring, etc. So any kind of success, I'm just a little bit of a figurehead, and the teams make it happen. So what I want to talk about initially is really about sustainability, and what does sustainability mean? And I have it here on my slide. Clean water is a key one, and I think we had wars about oil. I think we soon will have wars about water, so water is a biggie. Fertile lands. Europe has more fertile land than all of China, which it tells you that there is an issue, given that the level of population is quite different. And of course, energy and climate. So when one thinks about, what am I doing currently per year in terms of my fossil fuel, energy and climate, I'm burning in 1 year about 1 million years worth of accumulated fossil resource. So that is not sustainable. And if I have a look at this little slide here, this little graph, as you can see, currently we're using more than one planet of resources in terms of sustainability. And with business as usual, we will go up substantially, and we really need to change something. So that is for the whole world. If everybody lived like us, it would in fact need about 6 to 7 planets. And you can try these things out on these websites, how your behavior makes the world a better place or a worse place. You can type in whether you cycle to work or whether you walk to work or take the Ferrari. Always an important choice for me in the morning.
I mean, I tend to leave the Ferrari at home, but you know.
Yeah, you get students scratching it and things. It's terrible.
Absolutely, yeah.
So crisis is what I just sort of basically outlined, and I don't want to focus on it too much. But my Chinese students tell me that crisis in Mandarin are these two signs, and it's a composite word, opposite for German. It's danger and opportunity. So that's in Mandarin what crisis is defined as. And I hope that my students, are not putting my leg in. This is not Szechuan chicken or something, but still, danger and opportunity. And I just very briefly outlined the danger, and I really want to focus on the opportunity. And I'm a chemist. I'm a catalytic chemist, so I make chemical reactions go faster. And I set up 2 businesses. One is an energy storage business, Gelion. We won't talk about that today. That has to do with electrocatalysis. So it's how to make the electrons in the battery flow more quickly, in a way, the ions flow more quickly. And that is going very well. And the second one is Licella Holdings, which is about the conversion of plastics in particular to new products. So when one says, well, there's a crisis and there's an opportunity, people always say, well, how do you realize opportunity? And innovation is something that people talk about. You've got to innovate. We've got an innovation nation. I think that's been said in Britain as well as in Australia. Possibly not very meaningfully, but still it rhymes almost. So my strategy regarding innovation is to address real pressing problems with new technologies based on basic science, on what I try to be very high level, basic good science, and then create the solutions out there to exist, to interact with existing markets or even create new ones. Because although world revolution might be a fun thing to do, I think as a single guy it might be a bit hard. So let's just try and work with what we've got and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And relying therefore on economic forces to drive change rather than the next level. So, and I like to do that, and maybe my German genes come through here. I like to do this globally. So see how we go. In terms of transformation, there's always an issue about how do you measure transformation? And my good friend Alan Finkel, the chief scientist of Australia, he has a interesting little formula, and I think that's really apt to interpret all sorts of things in life. So transformation, in terms of the size of transformation, equals vision times competence divided by anxiety. So if you look at something in Westminster or how the European Union works, you think, right, so the size of the vision, the degree of competence divided by the anxiety. And you can see, well, transformation sometimes is pretty hard, right? Pretty hard because the vision might be on the smaller side, the competence could be on the even smaller side, and anxiety of re-election looms large. So that little formula explains our democratic process, I think, very nicely, and lots of other failures in life. So this is for me to put the science back into social science, and my contribution is this formula here, VC divided by A. So what I'm trying to do is come up, with these new things, and one of them is this technology that takes on this side here the feedstock, all sorts of things, waste biomass, brown coal, lignite, waste plastic, used lubrication oils, all sorts of things, into new high-value products through a process that I've developed that uses hot compressed water. So very, very straightforward in terms of what I need. I don't need aggressive acids. I don't need toxic chemicals. It has a number of catalysts in there, and we are trying to change the conversation with this catalyst from waste to a resource for all of these things. So what is this special bit that's in here? And this is a complicated looking slide, but it's very simple. If you think about water, water has got a range of different states. Water in your gin tonic can be either an ice cube or liquid. If you then have espresso after dinner, there can be a bit of steam, so that's your third phase. There's ice, solid, liquid, steam, or gas. And then supercritical water, which is what I'm using, is a fourth phase of matter. You can't really experience it in terms of water, because if you did, you would die instantly, because the pressure...
You would experience it for a very short period of time and probably wouldn't be able to tell anybody about it.
The moment of recognition would be instantaneous, but not lasting very long. Yeah, right. So we're looking at about 378 degrees, and then the pressure of more than 200 bars. So you would be squished into oblivion and boiled at the same time. So at that moment, the water changes in its properties, and so at this particular temperature and pressure, and almost many liquids do that. I mean, carbon dioxide as a gas does that. Methanol, ethanol is not something special to water. It's just a particular phase in the phase diagram of liquids. So this is the supercritical area, and then people in the game, they tend to play around that transition where it goes from what's called subcritical to just below the special phase to supercritical, and there's some technical reasons for that. So what we've done is we looked around the world, and Canfor, Canadian Forest, the third largest forestry company in the world, and Lysella, my startup, are working together to put a 200,000 ton a year initial module into the largest pulp and paper factory around the world in Prince George in Canada. And they have a lot of waste, biomass waste, and that is already accumulated there. It's sitting there. And what happens is that that is used as process heat. And this process heat is not a very high quality heat, because effectively I'm burning wet sawdust. So I'm never getting a high flame temperature. So it's a very poor use of that resource. So what we are doing is we're able to change this resource into a crude oil substitute that can be used in the circular economy. So this is a picture of our plant. So it's all real. You can see it if you ever come to Australia once the travel restrictions are lifted. And this is an artist's impression of something called lignin that is inside wood. So wood is basically like a composite material. It's fibrous, that's your cellulose. And then you've got lignin, that's like an epoxy glue around those fibers, making it very strong, just like glass fiber boat with the resin around the glass fibers. So that's wood, strong and flexible. And in this process, the water does what's called hydrolysis, so it cuts bonds with water. And then the various bits and pieces we do is we remove oxygen, because when we want to make an oil for refining, we don't want oxygen in there. Oxygen doesn't have any kind of energetic benefit, right? So, however, if I look at a piece of wood, about 50% of its weight is oxygen. So 50% of it is not useful for me. So this is the first thing we do. We make the wood liquid, and once we've done that, we take the oxygen out by a number of different reactions. And then this is what actually happens. You can see it here in a special vial that can take the temperature and pressure. So at time 0 minutes, not much happening, just a bit of wood and water. And then I heat it up and cool it down again, just to show you what happens. So I heat it up for 1 minute and cool it down again. The wood's starting to look a little bit worse for wear. And after 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, you just got a tiny bit of ash at the bottom. The water has turned colored, so that's a soluble bio-oil. And then at the top, we see those gray smudges, black smudges. That is actually liquid droplets of bio-oil. So any kind of wood can be made into bio-oil. And for anybody academic out there, if they've ever been in a committee meeting where they thought there's a lot of dead wood in this meeting, it gets me through those meetings. I can make you into bio-oil. Anyway,
there is some valuable oil in there somewhere.
There is some valuable oil in there. Yeah, this person must be able to make a contribution somehow. And this is another bit of another example where we have sawdust, and we can put it through our process, and then we see BioCrude oil coming out. And the cool thing is it's done to scale, so it's the same amount of chemical energy if I were to burn this in each volume. So it's a massive concentrator of chemical energy, if you will. It's slightly cheating because we're using a sawdust, and of course that has some air in it, so it's not just not particularly energy dense, but then the air makes it worse. So I have to say that just to be honest, but still you can see the difference there is quite dramatic. So from something which was solid, which was wet, which didn't do anything, I can now have an oil which is storable, blendable, refinable, can make plastics out of the oil if you wish. You can make paints, resins, lubrication oils, fuels, whatever you like. So that's much higher value than just burning it really, really inefficiently.
Yeah.
And so this is the combination between our plant and the site in Canada, and people are quite excited about this. Right, now, this oil then can go into a typical refinery, as you see here, a very schematic. Normally, crude oil comes in, gets distilled, so you basically boil it, gas comes off, and then a number of liquid streams can be separated according to their temperature, and then they get further processed to make whatever the refinery is set up to make. And in our case, if we add BioCrude into one of those refining streams, because we are already a lot more valuable than crude oil, we are already pre-refined through our process, then however many green atoms go in here, they translate into the same number of green atoms on the other side. And the key is to make as many olefins, so they're precursors for plastics, and as many chemicals as possible, because that means that the carbon stays in that circular economy. We don't want it to go into CO2. We have to keep it locked up. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's working quite well. And this is what it looks like in a refinery. So we have different blends with existing refinery stocks. And our bio-oil is dark, and you think it may be terrible. But that has something to do with some biomolecules being very, very darkly colored. So just like in this red wine, that actually doesn't have much color in it. It's just that it's a very strong color. After this treatment, you see this color is completely gone, and it just all looks like water, and it's wonderful, and you can use it as is in a whole range of different ways. So it's the biggest play in the world for this bio-renewable kind of petrochemical industry feedstock. So that's the sort of how it started. But then we noticed that China said we are not going to take any of these of the biomass waste, of the plastic waste. And countries like Malaysia and Indonesia also said, well, that's a sensible thing to do. We will also not take that anymore in this very unsorted fashion. And we thought, well, we could actually do something here. So that's where the waste plastic comes in. And it's a big problem. If I have beautifully well-sorted single type of plastic, I can already process it quite well by something called mechanical recycling. I can either melt it down, or I can make granules out of it, or I can squish it in some extractor, whatever. That is all possible, but that's not the majority of plastics. It's about maybe 6 to 8% of plastics are very pure when they're collected. The rest is a mixture. And the moment I have films in there, plastic bags, builders' films, Glad wrap, food films, etc., it gets very, very, very difficult. Or gloves, medical stuff, and nobody can do anything with it. So you either burn it or you bury it, and we're not allowed to burn really anymore in terms of EU legislation. They don't like that very much, and burying is also landfill is not the thing to do. So where I come from in Germany, they are not allowed to sell it. they're not allowed to export it back to China. They're not allowed to put it in the ground. They're not allowed to burn it. So currently there are big warehouses filling up of plastic waste. And that's quite a lot. It's about 6 million tons a year. So they're big warehouses. And so they're really under pressure. And in the UK, it's a bit similar. It used to be that there were just big barges of rubbish pulled between, this is true, pulled between the UK and Scandinavia, and the wind always blows from Ireland. So they would light that waste on these big barges, and all the toxic stuff would go to the continent. So, but when they joined the EU, it wasn't allowed anymore. So
yeah, that's a real case of out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? You don't realise what happens to all the waste, and another country has to pick up the pieces of it. And
I wonder whether this was really the main reason for Brexit. Let's smoke
legislation.
Yeah. So the big question is, how to deal with mixed end-of-life plastic, and here you can see another incarnation of what that looks like. And our process is the only one in the world which looks at this and says, "Yeah, I know what to do." So not only does this unused plastic, or end-of-life plastic, sort of get accumulated on land, but in countries which are not as well set up as Germany, basically goes into the rivers, and then the rivers go into the sea, and we're getting more and more plastic accumulation in the sea. And as this slide says, if current trends continue, our oceans will contain more plastic than fish by 2050, which is really sad, right? And I feel this cannot happen, and that is one of my motivations of doing what I'm doing. There are rivers in China that put about 1,000 tons of plastic an hour into the oceans, and that just goes 24/7. So. Yeah.
Wow.
So, as I was saying, the minority of plastic gets physically recycled, but then you've got this landfill burning it, or ends up in the environment, and a lot of it in waste and water. So what we want to do is to chemically recycle that plastic and basically make new plastic out of it, or other products which still lock up the carbon. So we don't want to get rid of that carbon. And so this is how it all works. So you see that plant already on the left-hand side that I showed you before. And what we do is we mix the plastic with a little bit of water and put it through, like a sausage-making machine, into our reactor, to which we add some supercritical water. And we undergo this reaction to make the plastic liquid. We generate some gas in the process as well. But the gas nicely can be used to fuel the boiler that generates my supercritical water. So the waste feeds its own processing. So we don't need external energy to do that. So we run this thing off the waste itself. And then we get out this plastic crude oil and inorganic fillers. So a white shopping bag, 30% by weight, is chalk in there.
Wow.
For example, yeah. So that just drops out, and that is one of the issues that kills most technologies, because they deposits as slag on any kind of pipe, like in your washing machine, and then the pipe just gets a coronary, and the whole plant dies. So in our case, this is not happening, because when the salts are in water, the hot water dissolves the salts. When it goes and changes into the phase of supercritical water is able to dissolve oil, but not salt. So all that dissolved salt immediately precipitates out as a fine mist in the reactor and just falls to the bottom. And it doesn't stick on any side. And that's one of the main breakthroughs that we had in terms of how our process works and how we can keep it going for many, many days and weeks. Okay. So the plastic crude that comes out, we then have a distillation column at the end of the plant that continuously produces these four streams, which are all commodity streams that are traded on the open market. Naphtha is used to make polyethylene, so plastic. Straight run gas oil is a version of diesel. You can do all sorts of things with that. Light cycle oil and waxes is really lubrications, and waxes, of course, industrial waxes. Lots of things use that, and then the residue can go wonderfully into as an additive into roads, and it makes the roads last longer and behave a little bit more flexibly. So these are all good markets, and it all works very well. And the inorganics can be used in brickworks or cement works as fillers. So we don't waste anything. The gas is used to run the thing, and then what comes out is all useful. We have some processed water. Most of that processed water gets re-injected, and some of it, just to keep salt balances at the right size, needs to go into water treatment, but that's just normal water treatment, nothing special. So we're not generating huge toxicity. So this is what it is, and this is being implemented in, as I said, in the UK, and with the same plastic mix feedstock, we can make a waxy kind of output or a very light kind of output. So just like a normal refinery, we can tune that to what is necessary on the day. This is there you are. So this is the site in Wilton. The old ICI site, and this is our plant, and the big green bit at the front is actually materials sorting plant. So the biggest bit is actually sorting the rubbish, and the glass, the metal, the plastic, the wood, and then only the orangey bit here that you see, that's our plant. And then the tanks are obvious where the products are stored, etc. So that's being built right now.
Wow.
They're pouring concrete slabs and whatever else right now, and should have it commissioned by, by the middle of next year to run commercially.
Oh, wow.
So very exciting. Now, I might be able to tell you all sorts of crazy things, but we got an award from the Global Packaging Prize Award, selected from more than 70 entrants, and it's been awarded by the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. And I have to say, when we were asked to go for this thing, I didn't know who they were, and I thought, well, this must be a niche kind of thing. But the experts of these companies selected us to be the ones who have the technology to help them with processing their plastic waste, which they're generating. And as legislation is coming in all over the world more and more, that is cradle to grave responsibility of producers. Our technology really helps them a lot to have that, to discharge that responsibility and actually be able to take care of the plastic films, etc., that they're making. So we're very excited about that. And the last slide is the worst, one of the worst plastic pollutions that we see is north of Australia in the Sea of East Timor. It's it's the youngest country in the world. It's one of the smallest countries in the world, and it's also one of the poorest countries in the world. But they're surrounded by beautiful ecosystem, but it is increasingly polluted by plastic. And the people there have not got much infrastructure. When the Portuguese left and Indonesia came in, they didn't treat East Timor very well. And you can look it up in the annals of history, quite a terrible time. So most of the infrastructure that they did have was destroyed in that period. And so the children are collecting the rubbish on the beaches and put them into sort of pits behind the beach. And then that's burnt once there's enough, and burned in the open air. And there are big cancer clusters, lung disease clusters, eye disease clusters, skin disease around these areas. Wow. So we've given the government of East Timor, here at the University of Sydney, a royalty-free perpetual license for the technology. And they're looking now with a number of large charities to build such a plant in East Timor. So we have nothing to do with it other than giving them the technology. So they also keep the profits to make the world a better place. And in my view, if the smallest, poorest, newest country in the world can do it, then anybody can. So that is our motivation largely behind our process.
Excellent, Thomas. Well, thank you very much. Can I get you to unshare your screen, please? So yeah, Thomas, thanks very much. It's really, I love how forward-looking it is, and obviously it's a really well-deserved award that you got there. I just love how not only does it kind of solve a plastic recycling issue, it's so self-contained that it stops the carbon dioxide going out into the air, and it's benefiting health, and it's just, all of the, it's all pros and seems to be very few cons. I was wondering if I could just ask you. You spoke earlier on about kind of anxieties as a resistance to the adoption of new technologies. What anxieties have you faced in this? Because to me, it seems as though there's, as I say, very few cons.
Right. So this has been under development for 14 years or so, and we've been, as a startup, in the intensive care unit of startup land quite a few times. And I think in terms of the founders, anxiety levels were a bit high at times, but we got through that, and we got another round of funding, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's anxiety of existing stakeholders because one doesn't operate in a vacuum, and certain things are actually quite well sorted out, and people are making good money. It may be a poor solution for the world, but they don't necessarily have great interest. Another anxiety is, of course, not in my backyard. So it's a hot process which has got pressure, and it's sort of petrochemically, and people might not like that so much. Principally, our main issue has been regulation. So it's a first of a kind, so we've got to convince the regulators that we are safe. Even though we are safe, pressures are less than in the power station, temperatures are less than in the refinery. It's all good. But, we have to do that. And a lot of regulations around the world say, well, where's your reference plant? Where's the thing that is the same size or bigger that's been running for 2 years that you can show me is safe? And if you say, well, no, we are new. That is a hurdle. That is a hurdle. So the anxiety of regulators has been, I guess, a principal issue for us.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, how well does it scale? Because you imagine that this on a big kind of production line with accumulating lots of plastic to put into the reactor. Does it work when there are smaller versions, so for more remote communities, let's say, that want to deal with their waste more locally?
Right. So it makes most sense economically from about 15,000 tons a year upwards. Okay. And then the largest size would be maybe 150 to 200,000 tons, and that has to do with the infrastructure of the waste collectors and sorters. You don't want to truck waste all through Europe. So it's really between that. So 15,000 to 200,000. If a small community has only 1,000 tons or so, that might be better suit. They might better use other things like gasification to then to generate gas and run a small gas turbine. But then the question is that economically viable or not? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What I would say is that if anyone out there has any other questions, then I think you will find Thomas on Twitter, but maybe the better thing to do is post your questions to the Quantum Source Twitter account, and then I can pass them to Thomas and we can have that conversation that way. Yeah, that sounds okay to you, Thomas?
Yeah, delighted to. Although I have a Twitter presence, I actually don't use the account. This was done by the University of Sydney marketing people. So if you go through the Quantum Source site, that would be the best way to go.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Thomas. And we'll leave you to your evening. And thanks for a really inspiring talk. It was really great.
Thank you very much for having me. Okay.
And
enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Technology.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. So that really feels like a you heard it here first moment. I really hope that Thomas's technology takes off and effectively becomes something that we almost take for granted into the future. We have to do something about our plastic waste, and if we can turn it into something useful at the same time, then surely that's all the better, and not something that we should have anxieties about. We just have to get on with it and do it. So if you enjoyed that then, we will be posting more videos in the next few weeks to keep you educated and entertained during lockdown times. Just keep your eyes peeled on the Quantum Source Twitter and Instagram feeds. It just remains for me to say that I've been Dr. Adam Booth, this has been Quantum Source, you've been great, stay well.